Good day, change makers. This is Vonnie Guthrie at Fundraise 411. We're so glad that you joined us today. We are your go-to resource for strengthening your nonprofit or small business. And as we say in our office, your growth is our goal. Today, we're going to talk about nonprofit formation. And so I know it sounds like a simple topic, but it's a really important topic. I have found that many organizations are not properly set up. They come to us and look for opportunities to do revenue diversification or to change programs or strengthen programs. And when we look at their compliance and their legal status, we find that they are actually not a nonprofit. I know that sounds a little crazy, but what we found is that there's a lot of bad information out there and people are just being told one or two parts of the process. And then there's a lot of online processors who are just doing what the standard is for the state and federal, but then don't know the other steps that are required at the state level. And so they miss that particular step. So the process is 4 steps, right? The first step is that you have to register your nonprofit as a nonprofit corporation with your Secretary of State. And so please be sure that you go and check your Secretary of State to find out their process. The majority of them do it online. It is digitized, so it is fairly easy. But there are a handful that still do good old paper and pen and snail mail. And so you want to make sure that you know the process for your particular state. When you do that, be sure that you fully thought through your board of directors and what that looks like. And then what will happen is the state will generate an articles of incorporation for you, and you will get a letter from the Secretary of State with their seal saying that you are a valid and approved nonprofit. Some people stop there and think that means they're a nonprofit. You are not a nonprofit yet, honey. So you have to keep going. Once you have that, make sure you understand that Secretary of State does require you to do an annual report. That is very important. Make sure you flag that, put it on your calendar for the next year. They will send you email reminders, but sometimes I know we get a million emails, and so sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle. So just put a tickler in there for yourself. The other thing is some states have a really cool caveat where you're able to do what's called a name reservation. And so Georgia has this. And what that does is it allows you to reserve the name of your nonprofit. So if you really know that you want to be ABC nonprofit, you can hold that name so that no one else can claim that in your state. And what it gives you is a 30-day window to get all your other ducks in a row so you can do your actual physical filing with the Secretary of State. So that's a great thing to have in place. The fee structure for all these things ranges from $20 to $100. And so it depends on your state. You would have to verify that with your state so you know what your responsibility is financially. Once you finish that, step 2 is that we go to the IRS to go claim an EIN number for your nonprofit corporation. Again, fairly easy process, can do it online. Just be sure you really read through those checkoff points. And so you make sure that you're checking yourself off as a nonprofit and not some other kind of for-profit entity or some other organization. And it aligns with the work that you're intending to do. Once you do that, when you get to the end of that application process, it should take roughly 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 20, depending on how fast you are in your typing. You will then get a prompt that will say we can either generate the letter right now or we can email you the letter. And so whatever your preference is, you would then just download it and then keep a copy on file for future reference. And so make sure you keep all your legal documents on file and in hand in the event you need to present that to someone as a funder or due diligence that may request that, because sometimes they do, so that you have it on hand and as part of your your compliance package. Right. Once you have that, then we go to step 3. Step 3 is your federal filing. So this is your wonderful 1023. Your 1023 is done online, depending on the type of nonprofit you're trying to set up. Most people set up a 501c3, which is sort of the standard community-based nonprofit that does some kind of work in the community, whether it's in healthcare or education or maybe recidivism, whatever your heart moves toward for programming to help your community. And usually that falls under that umbrella. There are other organizations that are nonprofits that don't fall under that umbrella that are filed a little differently. An example of that is a church. So a church cannot do an online filing. And there's actually a question when you do the online filing, are you establishing a church? And once you click that off, it says, nope, we can't help you. You need to go to a paper application. Once you get the paper application, you then will have to fill that out and mail that in. Again, it takes a little longer because, the federal government mail system is pretty in depth. And so With the filing of a church, there are different document requirements than there are for filing a community-based 501c3. So you just need to make sure you have those documents in the application and sent along with your paper application. The other thing I want to just mention really quickly is that a lot of people confuse the articles of incorporation with the bylaws. And so they are two very separate documents, but they are two very important documents for your organization. The articles is something that's generated by your Secretary of State. It's nothing that you do. It's automated. The bylaws are different. They are generated by you. And so the bylaws are really your governing body for the organization, from the high level of your board to how you're operating internally, depending on how in the weeds you want your bylaws to be. Bylaws typically range anywhere from 15 to 20 plus pages, exactly depending on the weeds, what you are trying to accomplish, and how detailed you want that to be for your team, right? It's really your internal manual, essentially, at the end of the day. And again, that is a question that is on the 1023, so you need to be able to check that off, that exists. And some funders will ask you for a copy of your bylaws, so it's important that you have it, and you have to adopt it and all that wonderful stuff, right? Once you have the 1023 filed, it takes about 4 to 6 months for you to get your response. The IRS has gotten really great about it. Sometimes it's a little quicker if you happen to get lucky. There is a way you can expedite, but that's not going to be part of this particular session. And so the expedite is a bit quicker, depending on what your needs are. Once you have that on file, you will get a hard copy of the letter in the mail to the address that you put on the application. So make sure that address is correct and that you haven't switched a number or missed a name. I've seen that happen, and then the letter just goes into the abyss. And so that letter is important. Put it, scan it, digitize it. That is your proof and validation you are legit for real, a nonprofit, and it is what funders will ask for, a copy of that 501c3 determination letter. Once you have that letter, what's going to happen is the IRS is then going to put you in their database. It takes a couple of weeks for that, sometimes longer, depending on how busy they are, and you will have a profile on the IRS, and there the funder can do a due diligence check and see, yes, you are a valid 501c3, and they can see that you have filed your 990s accordingly and on time. Once you have that, then you can go and do step 4, which is our final step. Ooh, we're almost done. Our final step, right, is that you then would go back to your state and do your charities registration. Now, this is not required for every state. So it is required for most states. The majority of states do have it. For example, Texas does not require this. But like I said, the majority of states do. And so that is either managed by your Attorney General or your Department of Agriculture, depending on your state and where the licensure sits. And so what happens is you file online. It's a pretty simple process. Just who are you as an organization? How are you intending to solicit? What are your plans in that respect? Who is your governing body? All that good stuff. And so you submit that. There is typically no fee the first year because they know you're just starting out. You don't probably have the money to pay it anyway, but there is a fee as you grow and elevate in your financial bracket as an organization. And so once that's submitted, you're going to get that back in about 30 days or so. You're going to get an approval. They're going to give you a charities number. That number is the number that validates you to go and solicit, and you can start doing all those wonderful online campaigns. You can do your major gifts, you can do your online giving, your individual giving, and you can start pursuing grants and other things, contracts, what have you. And so that's very important, that you must renew every single year. So make sure, again, put it on your calendar, send a tickler 4 weeks before the due date. They will send you an email to remind you. Again, if you're not great on emails, have your own system in place as a backup. Super important. You don't want to miss these filings. I've seen far too many groups miss these filings and then miss opportunities because of them. Certain funders do require you to actually provide that charity number in order for you to even apply for funding. So once you have your charities number, the other thing you want to do too, as part of that, is pursue your tax exemption consumer letter. What that does is that allows you to go and purchase items from Walmart, Target, Staples, any local vendor, and not be charged tax. And so they'll ask for a copy of that letter in order to process it properly. And then that is valid for 5 to 10 years, depending on your state. And it was renewed every 5 to 10 years. So like I said, every state has different rules. Check the rules for your state. Make sure you're compliant with your state. And there you go. That's the full, complete process for starting a nonprofit. If you want to have a more in-depth workshop and really where we go through the weeds and walk you through the process, come join us on www.fundraise.org and sign on up, or follow us on social media at Fundraise411, and we'd be happy to. You'll see some of our tips and some of the things that we're doing, and we wish you much success in your growth as an organization and the work that you're doing. Thank you so much and have a great day. Thanks for being with us. Take care.